Let's move to a related topic, and this is something that, of course, led to half of Durban being plunged into darkness yesterday. And it seems that it was a trip and not an explosion that caused the blackout in Durban last night. The municipality is saying this. Half the city left in the dark, battling the heat in the city, which has been extreme. Many residents feeling the knock-on impact of that. eNCA senior reporter Dessen Thathia has been tracking the damage. He joins us now. Dessen, thank you so much for coming through to us. So let's just go back to that dramatic footage, which we've all seen, this explosion. So is the municipality saying that there was a trip, a substation trip, and then it exploded? What exactly are they saying happened? Because you see an explosion like that, and your first question is this sabotage?
That is the question that I think many people were asking in the city. At this point, the city is saying that it looks more like it was the bad weather that we had last night, the lightning and the heavy winds that may have contributed to that damage. Now to the Shallcross substation and that line in particular. So the city is saying that's not 100% confirmed yet, but that's what it's starting to look like. So they haven't mentioned sabotage at this point, but let's bear in mind that they're also still busy with assessments, and they've been spending the day with their teams out looking at the possible causes and any other damage that may have been caused. So as a result of that fault on the Shallcross side and with that particular substation, it then caused a trip at the Klaarwater substation. That is the main point from Eskom into the city for the supply, and that's where that happened. So there have been lots of accounts about exactly what it looked like, what it sounded like, but I can tell you that there was a lot of panic, anxiety yesterday. I mean, residents really were going through a lot because they had this bad weather to deal with, the lightning, the winds, and then there was this sudden heat wave, and there were fake pictures being distributed of all sorts of things taken from the internet. So certainly a lot going on, and people were wondering what was happening. But those are the facts that we've been given now by the city. We understand what's happened. They restored the power within about 2 hours. But I can tell you that this incident last night will be the talk of the town in Durban for the longest time, particularly for those that live in that very area. I want you to listen to a conversation that I had with one of the residents in Klaarwater, which is near that substation, and one of the residents telling me what they experienced when all of this happened yesterday.
I was actually sitting at home with my granny. We were watching TV, and then like all of a sudden, exactly, it was windy and it was very warm. And then like all of a sudden we just saw a light, like it was a blast. We don't know if it was like the power station or the lightning, but it just, the light was hard. Like it went hard, and then we peeked outside and like the power went off. And then after that, that was just it.
How long did that whole incident last?
Like the explosion and everything. Since like the wind started, the warm wind, along with the dust and everything, I think the incident happened for at least like 2 minutes or so. You know, honestly, I actually thought Jesus was coming back. I was like, you know what, I'm going to sleep. You know, Jesus is gonna come for me while I'm asleep. And yeah, that was it, man. That was it. I thought the electricity was gonna come back, but it didn't come back. And
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, he says he thought Jesus was coming back. I mean, if you look at those visuals, they certainly do look quite apocalyptic. I mean, it's like end of days stuff. You know what surprises me, Dessen, is you're saying that within 2 hours, despite this huge explosion, it may have been caused by a lightning strike that led to a trip. At the end of the day, there was this massive ball of flame in the sky. How is it that it only led to 2 hours of outages?
Well, it definitely wasn't normal. As I said, I think many of the residents had not seen anything like that. But the city then responded, and one of the first things that they did was they used the example of how you would sort this out in your own house when something trips. So you would isolate each of the switches, and that's what they effectively did. So they narrowed it down to that Shallcross area, and as a result of that, many of the areas got their power back, but Shallcross and its surrounds didn't. And that's something that they're still working on now. But then this morning, there were a few other reports. I counted it, I think, almost 20 areas today where reports had come in talking about outages. Again, teams were on the ground, but the municipality has warned that it is stretched to the limit as it tries to work through all of this. And as a result of that, there might be some delays. So the 2 hours really was just to get to the point of switching back the power for those areas that were not affected.
I mean, it's astonishing, Des, and if you think about it, I mean, what Durban has been through just in the last year, it's really been very, very rough. I suppose there'll be lots of questions once we know exactly what caused this trip. If it was a lightning strike, you would imagine that stations and substations would have some sort of lightning protection. I mean, we're speculating now because we don't know exactly if that's what caused the trip, but it seems quite likely.
Well, that was definitely one of the questions that I wanted to put to the officials that I was hoping to speak to today, and I didn't get an opportunity to. But it was around exactly that. Remember, our infrastructure right now is already fragile because of the floods, and there was a lot of damage to that, which resulted in us losing capacity after the floods. But then the question that now arises is, if you look at yesterday, and if there's a repeat of something like that in the coming days or in the coming weeks, what sort of protection do we have, and which other substations would be affected? So that's something that we need to look into. We will give authorities time to get through this initial assessment, but it's something that we need to get answers to, because residents, I can tell you, at this point are up to here with power outages and water cuts and all of these things in the city. So they want to ensure that when it's not load shedding, at least we have a constant supply of electricity.
Has the city absolutely ruled out any possibility of sabotage or arson?
Not directly, Sal. So right now, as I said, the early indications are around the weather conditions. But I imagine that if there was anything to that effect, it would only come out after those assessments are done. So they said it's quite an elaborate process. They would have to go through all of the cabling that runs from one substation to the other, all of the other infrastructure to make that assessment. But the early indications are that it isn't, as much as that's the speculation that's been doing the rounds.
All right. What an intense evening. And thank you very much for that update. That's Dessen Thathia coming to us live from Durban after that explosion after a trip at a substation. Plunged half the city into darkness. Most areas have since been restored.